Okay, so this is a story that obviously I was in the middle of it, and I've talked to a lot of people just this week about it. I don't think it's ever been told in public. I'm going to give the outline and then just turn it over to Blake to correct me and to fill in the details. But here's the story. So Blake worked for me at Fox News for years, probably more closely than anybody, like intimately at Fox, and I love Blake. And Blake is obviously an unusual person, but just a wonderful person and a really deeply decent person.
I mean, it's true.
And obviously, yeah, but Blake's weird, but like Blake is the best. And people who love Blake really love Blake. And there's a little group of people who, we all know each other. We all talk about Blake. So Blake got caught up right at the height of all this insanity, true insanity called cancel culture. But it was more than that. It was like French Revolution stuff. And someone like, Blake is naughty. Blake is a racist. Well, actually, as I would always say, Blake is actually not a racist. And I would admit it. He's not. He's a Christian who believes that God created everybody. So he's actually not a racist. But Fox overreacted, of course, and he left. And then Fox denounced him. They tried to get me to denounce him. Suzanne Scott tried to make me denounce Blake, and I refused. Something I'm proud of. But whatever. It was just awful. It was the saddest moment in the 15 years that I spent there. And then Blake's unemployed. And unemployable. And I get this, and I feel terrible, and I feel like I've got a moral obligation to help Blake. But who's going to hire Blake? Because he's like, in the New York Times, he's like a bad person, when actually he's a great person. Charlie Kirk calls me. He's like, I'm thinking about hiring Blake. I was like, God bless you, Charlie. What's he like? I said, well, Blake's very eccentric, like, no kidding. He's the only person who ever lost weight eating junk food. Like, he's a really unusual person. Like, we talk about Blake all day long. But he's a wonderful person, and he's incredibly talented. No one disputes that, and I think you should do it. He does. Charlie and I talk about it. Then Blake and I talk about it. We're having these like conversations behind the scenes about each other. And not only does Charlie hire Blake, he puts us, it makes me emotional, he puts Blake on the air as if to say, I know this man. He is a good man. You will judge me for doing this. I'm doing it anyway because it's the right thing to do. And then, of course, it becomes this whole thing where Blake is like a true asset to him. But when he first did it, it was like, no. I'm doing this because it's the right thing to do. This is the last thing I'll say before turning over to Blake. I've been in this business my whole life. Nobody does that. Nobody does that. Everyone's like, oh, I'm for free speech or whatever, until it hurts me, at which point, like, sorry, pal, good luck. But Charlie pivoted against that in a way that exposed him and his group, Turning Point, to ridicule and risk, and he did it anyway. And all week I've been talking to people about this, like, that was the acid test. Those of us in this business know how brave that was. It was the bravest thing. Anyway, sorry, Blake.
I remember talking to you about that because I actually was weighing another employment option, and I was going, as you said, I was like, I joined.
Which I think you maybe were behind that one too.
Yeah, I was desperate to get this
another
man a
option,
job.
and I remember just, I won't say what it was for, but we were talking about it, and I think the one that you really pointed out that was really important, he's like, Blake, I think the most important thing, like, Charlie is for real a sincere Christian.
Yes.
And I think you're going to want to work for someone who is a for real, sincere, deeply believing Christian.
Yes.
And, because then you'll disagree on a lot of things, but you will align on really important things.
Yes.
And I think that was what carried the day with me. And I'm very glad it did. And, at the time, as you said, it was like, at the time I came in, he was just a very different person.
Yes.
And it was over time realizing all the ways that, as you say, you have to really see it. You're like, is this for real?
Yeah,
like,
you and I talked about this.
What is it? Is this going to work? It would also have that where you're like, this can't possibly work, right? And it does. And it does because he's so completely, intently sincere and fully all in on it. And I think that's what like amazed young people. Like, when you go to these campus events and, I think there's a lot of, you'll see these people online who are like very like performatively trad or Christian or whatever because it like owns the libs or whatever.
Yeah,
and then,
exactly.
But Charlie is just like, no, I like 100% believe in this, because I believe it is true and because it is important, and I want everyone else to believe in it because it is true, and I think it is the most important decision they will ever make. And it would always shine through in what he was doing and how he behaved, that he really believed that. And
I mean, I think, and this because you were at some of the campus stops, I was at some of the campus stops. 90% of the interactions as he got older, right? The brand of Charlie was almost cemented, in 2018 where he was much younger and he was like a peer to the kids on college, and he would say Charlie Kirk destroys the libs or whatever. And that was just titling. It wasn't actually in Charlie's heart, but Charlie, by the way, didn't determine the titles. You know, like people
he didn't
behind
want
the
to
scenes.
destroy anybody.
No, behind the scenes. Yeah. That's a social media team that's doing the titling. That wasn't Charlie picking the title, anyways. But the point is, as he got older, he transitioned to a much more big brother, and people started observing like this incredible Herculean patience that he would exhibit in these interactions with sometimes bad faith people, but sometimes people that just had bad ideas. And 90%, if you went and sat there and watched the entire 3-hour Prove Me Wrong, 90% of it is him being kind and gentle and thought-provoking and working through whatever was the lie that was stuck in this kid's head, or sometimes professors, but he would work with them through it and use the Socratic method to draw out the truth. And it was a beautiful thing. And, he doesn't get nearly enough credit for that because the Charlie Destroys the Libs clip goes mega viral, right?
I couldn't agree with you more. I have to say, when all that happened to you, I just cannot say how because we've talked about it many times, but that was like one of the most painful things that's ever happened to me in my life. Because we have such a tight staff and the same staff. Like I don't have new people working for me really ever, and I don't care to. So that was really, really painful.
Go ahead.
I just wanted you to have health insurance. My expectations for you were so low because you had been so mistreated and maligned and slandered. And it's just so hard to come back from that. The fact that he put you on the air is
possibly a mistake.
What? It was not a mistake, but that is so wild.
So I have an insight into that piece of the story because I was aware of this other job opportunity, and I see it now all as like God's plan. And I was working on kind of a panel show idea, but I didn't have it was just like a nugget of an idea. It was back in my head. And I remember kind of just intuiting that in order to like restore this man that had been so wronged by Oliver Darcy or whatever in CNN, these scumbags, I thought,
I need to forgive Oliver Darcy. Thank you for reminding me. As we forgive those who trespass against us, he needs to be my daily rotation.
So, but and by the way, I ended up in that moment, when we were talking with Blake at the beginning, I looked back at your monologue from that night. Maybe it wasn't your monologue, maybe it was the final segment, but you said you really were defiant, and it was beautifully done because you were back at you were part of something and only had so much control at that moment, right? And so
they were bullying me. Suzanne Scott got me. I was in the parking lot of a place I was in Bozeman, Montana fishing, and she called me, and I went outside to do my pre-show bathroom break, always outside if I can do it. And she called me and she said, you need to say what he said was wrong. And I said, I'm not doing that, period. And you can fire me and the show's live in 10 minutes. I'm not doing that. And she goes, well, I guess I can't make you. And until the day she fired me, she never really talked to me after that.
Yeah, I'm not trying to get into any of that, but I do believe that.
I want to get into it. It was horrible what they did to him.
I'm just saying. I don't know where to go with it. I will say, Tucker, this is awkward for me.
Sorry. No. Sorry.
No, I would just say that I think this moment has profoundly changed all of us, including people like Suzanne, and I just want to say briefly, for what it's worth, she's been exceedingly wonderful.
I shouldn't
and kind.
say that. And we all change, and I've done crappy things, a lot of crappy things in my life, so I shouldn't be judgy.
But to your point, your hands were tied in that moment, and you defiantly said, I remember you said, I just want everybody to know that you are gloating over a young man's life being ruined, and shame on you. You basically, I'll never forget that, and I remember thinking, okay. Like, if Tucker's got his back in this moment, this guy's pretty great.
He's the best.
Yeah, and he's been the best. And I love having Blake on our team.
They came out of nowhere, man. I'll never forget that. I'll never forget that as long as I live. But anyway, the point is, whatever. And I shouldn't even have brought up
we put him on air.
Exactly.
And by the way, and now, look at this. The show is going on. Erica Kirk has demanded that the show goes on. And we're going to figure out the details. And Blake is going to be critical to that. And if we hadn't have created this roster, this thought crime crew that we do on Thursdays, I don't know what we would do.
But it takes the bravery of an individual to get there. So like everything is fine now and Blake can do whatever he wants and people know who he is because they get to see him and they can make their own judgments about him. But when Charlie made that decision, and he's the one who would have been blamed if it had gone wrong, people didn't know who Blake was apart from what they read in the New York Times. Slander devised by CNN and Oliver Darcy. That's a fact. And not helped by a lot of other people who I shouldn't be attacking. You're right. Sorry about that. But he's the one who allowed Blake's life to continue. And I felt it so strong because that's my world. Like, I know what that is. And all these people are like, well, you can't put him on air. Like, he did bad things. I heard that. And Charlie was like, he was willing to stand up to them and say, no, that's not true. Like, most people are not going to do that. No one will do that. And
well, and I remember the nasty articles. There was a few. And Charlie would just write back, LOL.
So that's courage. In case you're wondering what courage is, that's actual courage. And you know that it is because it's so rare. Nobody does that. If people do that, who are they? I live in this world. Like, I know every single person hosting every single show, and they don't do that. And he did that. And so that's what actual courage is. Courage is standing up for what is true in the service of other people, in the service of showing love to other human beings. That's the commission that we get from Jesus, period. And he actually did that at great risk to himself. And anyway, I've had like 50 text exchanges about this all week. Come up. Anyway, bless you, Blake, for being
thank you.
at the center of that.
Thanks for standing with us.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Genuinely.